Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
From the whispering deserts of the ancient Near East to the verdant coasts of West Africa and the tropical hinterlands of the Congo, a journey unfolds, a story passed down through the echoes of time, buried under colonial histories and theological dogmas. It is the story of a people, Black Hebrews, whose identity has stirred academic debates, inspired spiritual awakenings, and given rise to movements across the globe. This history is neither modern invention nor mere legend. It is a long and winding narrative of migration, exile, resilience, and survival. In the heart of this story lies a question that has never been fully settled but continues to burn with compelling urgency. What happened to the original Israelites, and how did they find their way to the lands of Africa? This exploration is not just about geography. It is about bloodlines, belief systems, languages, culture, and identity that took root in places far from Jerusalem but never lost their sacred connection to it. For centuries, a number of African communities have claimed descent from the ancient Israelites. While modern scholarship and genetics are slowly catching up to these oral traditions, their narratives remain largely unacknowledged in mainstream historical accounts. This article seeks to trace the historical path of the Black Hebrews from the ancient land of Israel to the vast corners of Africa, uncovering the blend of history, faith, and geopolitics that shaped their dispersion. It is a journey that spans thousands of years, touching empires, religious revolutions, and diasporic destinies that connect the biblical world to the soul of the African continent. The story begins in ancient Israel. The ancient Israelites were a Semitic people who emerged in the Levant during the Late Bronze Age, around the 13th century BCE. Their early history is intertwined with a broader Canaanite culture, though they would come to distinguish themselves through a unique monotheistic faith centered around Yahweh. These Israelites were not European, nor were they portrayed as such in the earliest depictions. Rather, they were dark-skinned, with features similar to the neighboring Egyptians, Nubians, and Cushites, as evidenced in ancient art, such as Egyptian tomb paintings and carvings from the reign of Pharaoh Ramses III. The kingdoms of Israel and Judah formed the political core of the Israelite people, but their trajectory was tumultuous. The destruction of the northern kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians in 722 BC began a long legacy of exile and scattering. Many Israelites were deported to Mesopotamia and other Assyrian territories. Later, the Babylonian conquest of Judah in 586 BCE would intensify this dispersion, forcing thousands into exile in Babylon. It was during these early exiles that the seeds of diaspora began to spread. The people of Israel, scattered by war and imperial policies, began forming communities outside their ancestral homeland. Some migrated eastward into Persia, others westward into Egypt. Egypt, in particular, became a major center for the Hebrew diaspora. By the time of the Greek historian Herodotus, 5th century BCE, there was already a significant Hebrew presence in Egypt, especially in Elephantine, where an established Jewish military colony existed. This colony even had a functioning temple to Yahweh, independent of the Jerusalem temple, a testament to the cultural and religious continuity among these early exiles. As the centuries passed, a greater migration southward into Africa began to unfold. Driven by a combination of Roman persecution following the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, trade routes, and the natural human impulse to flee conflict and seek refuge, Hebrew communities began establishing themselves deep within the African interior. One of the most significant yet underexplored historical movements of Black Hebrews into Africa occurred after the fall of Jerusalem under Roman rule. In the wake of the Great Jewish Revolt, 66 to 73 CE, and the Bar Kokhba Revolt, 132 to 135 CE, Roman authorities brutally suppressed Jewish resistance, killing or enslaving hundreds of thousands. According to the Roman historian Tacitus and the Jewish historian Josephus, many of the survivors were sold into slavery across North Africa, while others fled voluntarily into Egypt, Ethiopia, and further south. These Jewish fugitives, many of whom were already of African descent or mixed heritage due to centuries of intermarriage in Egypt and Nubia, brought their traditions with them. In Ethiopia, they found fertile ground. The Beta Israel community, also known as the Ethiopian Jews, claims direct descent from the ancient Israelites. Ethiopian royal chronicles, as well as Jewish and Christian apocryphal texts like the Keber Nagast, tell of Menelik I, the son of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon, who allegedly carried the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem to Aksum. Though modern historians debate this tale's literal truth, the religious and cultural practices of the Beta Israel, such as adherence to the Torah, circumcision on the eighth day, and dietary laws, underscore a profound Hebraic tradition that predates European missionary contact. In West Africa, similar stories emerge. The Igbo people of southeastern Nigeria, for instance, have long held oral traditions of descent from the Israelites. Many of their customs, such as ritual purity laws, blood sacrifices, and ark-like structures in their places of worship, bear striking resemblances to Old Testament practices. Some scholars, like Alauda Equiano in the 18th century, and more recently Professor Tudor Parfit, have examined the possibility of a Hebraic origin for the Igbo. The 20th century scholar Joseph J. Williams even wrote about Jewish practices among the Ashanti of Ghana and the Yoruba of Nigeria. Moreover, Jewish communities also appeared in Timbuktu and Gao, significant centers of medieval learning and commerce in Mali. Arabic sources such as Al-Makrizi and Leo Africanus describe Hebrew-speaking merchants and communities in the Sahel region as early as the 9th century. These Jews were part of the Saharan trade networks, dealing in salt, gold, and manuscripts. Some scholars believe they descended from North African Jews who migrated southward, while others may have been indigenous Africans who adopted Jewish customs or had ancient ancestral links to the Hebrew peoples. The Lemba people of southern Africa, particularly in Zimbabwe and South Africa, represent another compelling chapter in this story. They have long claimed descent from ancient Jewish tribes, asserting that their ancestors came from Senna, a place that many equate with ancient Yemen. Genetic studies conducted in the early 2000s reveal that many Lemba men carry the Cohen modal haplotype, genetic markers associated with the Jewish priestly line of Aaron. This discovery provided scientific backing for their oral traditions and highlighted the complexity of African and Hebrew interconnectedness. Colonialism and racism, unfortunately, buried much of this narrative. During the transatlantic slave trade, many African captives taken to the Americas carried with them vestiges of Hebrew customs, whether through the remnants of ancestral memory or from sustained community practice. European colonizers often labeled any African customs that mirrored Judaic traditions as pagan, effectively erasing millennia of Hebraic African synthesis. In the Americas, the Black Hebrew identity re-emerged with vigor during the 19th and 20th centuries. In the face of racial oppression and the search for identity, many African Americans began reclaiming their ancient Hebrew heritage. Figures like William Saunders Crowdy, Wentworth Arthur Matthew, and Rabbi Ben Ami Ben Israel played key roles in revitalizing the narrative that African peoples, especially those enslaved in the Americas, were descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. Ben Ami would later lead a migration of African American Hebrews to Israel, where a thriving Black Hebrew community continues to exist in Dimona. This reawakening is not simply a religious movement, but a historical assertion, a reclaiming of a story long denied and obscured. It challenges dominant paradigms of Jewish identity and African history, calling for a broader understanding that includes the multitude of voices, hues, and experiences that make up the ancient Israelite legacy. The journey of the Black Hebrews from Israel to Africa is not a myth. It is a testament to the resilience of a people who carried their identity across deserts, through empires, amid exile and enslavement. Their legacy lives on, not only in scripture and DNA, but in the languages, rituals, and memories passed down from generation to generation. It is a story that redefines who we think we are, where we come from, and how interconnected our past truly are.